Coders, welcome back to our UIKit series. Today we'll dive into dynamic lists in UIKit using UITableView to make a list style layout and UICollectionView for grid displays. We're going to be making a very simple to-do list with our table view and a grid layout with our collection view. We're going to use storyboard as much as possible, but there are some things that we're going to do programmatically. So let's go ahead and dive on in. So I am going to be creating a new project on my end, but if you have a project you've been working on and you'd like to kind of add it to your own, feel free to do so. I'm just going to call mine TableView and CollectionView demo. Since we're using UIKit, we're going to be using storyboard, and we're also going to be making sure our language is on Swift. I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. Cool, let's go ahead and head on over to our main storyboard. We're going to go to our object library in the top right here, and what we're going to be doing is going to be grabbing a new table view. So you can either search table view or UITableView. Kind of looks like this grid here. Basically, this is going to have rows that are grouped into sections, and the sections can optionally have headers and footers. Cool. Let's go ahead and drag this onto our screen, and we're actually going to use our auto layout here. I'm going to set the constraints from the top, left, and right to be 0. But I'm going to leave a little bit of a buffer at the bottom of 100, just to kind of show you what it looks like when we change the background and we run it in the simulator, just so you can kind of see how that looks. But feel free to make this, 0 constraints if you want your entire screen to be the table view. I'm going to set my background to be the cyan color. I'm a big fan of purples and blues. I don't know what it is. Just, I don't know, they speak to me. Next, let's click on our resize table view here. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going to the attributes inspector, and we're going to be creating a prototype cell. And we're going to be setting this to just be 1 for now. This is going to enable a single reusable cell, and we're going to kind of use this to create all of our other cells later, which is pretty cool. We can actually now click on this prototype cell here. If you double click, you'll have some different modes. So just make sure you've single clicked on it. You can also go to the left side of the screen here where we can kind of see all of our items and click on this table view. I think it's called this table view cell for it to expand it. So if you click on this table view cell, you'll also get the correct selection. And here is where we're going to be setting an identifier under our attributes inspector. So those 3 lines here. And we're going to be calling it to-do cell. If you call it something different when we're going through this example, so maybe yours is like a grocery item cell and things like that, wherever I've referenced to-do cell, just put whatever you put for this identifier. We're going to be typing it a few times, and you'll kind of see what I mean in a few minutes. We're going to set its style to also be basic. But if you'd like to kind of play around with these, you absolutely can. You can even have like a right detail, a left detail, right? As well as a subtitle, which is pretty cool. But we're just going to be having ours to basic for now. Always feel free in these tutorials to kind of put your own creation and your own spin on it, right? I kind of create these so you can follow along and then, customize them to your heart's content, right? Teach a man to fish type thing. Okay, cool. So this cell is now configured with an identifier ready to display items in the table. Let's go ahead and set up the data source in the code. So the first thing we're going to do is actually create an array. So in order to access our view controller, we're going to click on these 3 lines here and hit assistant, or from the top of our screen, editor assistant. We're going to create some space here because we're going to be adding some functions and whatnot. So let's go ahead and create an array of to-do list items, and we can do that by saying let to-do items equals, and we're going to create an array by using those square brackets, and we're going to put each of our items, and then they're going to be separated by a comma. So I'm going to think of some things that I normally do: buy groceries, comma, we're going to add another string, go to the gym, let's say play with the cat. I'm just going to capitalize this so it's a little bit more uniform. I wish. I actually don't have a cat, but I really like cats. Read a book, maybe. And then finally we'll say, practice coding. Because why not? Why not? So whatever you want to kind of create in this list, this is what we're going to be using for the items in our cell. Next, we're going to create an outlet from our table view. We're going to connect that to our view controller. So if you want to go back to our view controller here, I'm just going to try to create a little bit more real estate on our screens here. Oh wow, that's hardly any. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select our table view here, and I'm going to control drag it over to our view controller. I'm going to let go, and it's going to allow us to name our outlet. I'm just going to call mine table view for now. But you know, if you wanted yours to be like to-do list table view or grocery table view, whatever, right? Feel free to name it whatever makes sense for you. And this is basically going to have that connection between the code and the table view element. Pretty cool stuff. Next, we're actually going to go to our class view controller. So if you see all the way on the 10th line here, where it says class view controller, UI view controller, we're going to add a comma, and we're going to actually also set this to be a UI table view data source. And this basically says the method that an object adapts to manage data and provide cells for a table view, which that's definitely what we're going to be needing to do. So we're going to go ahead and auto correct it there, and we are going to get an error. I'm just going to go to our view controller on this kind of project navigator here so we can kind of see the code a little bit easier, but if you want to work in the assistant viewer, please feel free to do so. And it says type view controller does not conform to protocol UITableView data source. So we're kind of missing some elements that are expected of a UI data source. So I actually have this fix option here, and when I press it, it's actually going to go ahead and add these functions with placeholders that are going to basically return the number of rows based on the count of items in to-do list, as well as configure and return each cell with the text for a to-do item. So I'm actually going to select both of these just because with my code, I typically put my functions under the view did load. I'm going to Command X, I'm going to Command V. So I'm going to add some comments here. Returns the number of rows based on the count of items in to-do items, which is our array we had created. And I'm going to add this comment here, configures and returns each cell with the text for to-do items. Wonderful. So we're going to go ahead and add some code here, and for this one it's actually really easy. We're just going to actually return to-do items, so our array there, dot count. So this is returning the number of rows based on the number of items. So it's going to take our table view and it's going to look at how many different items we have in our array. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to return 5 cells. So, or sorry, 5 rows. My apologies, 5 rows. Next, we're going to configure and return each cell with the text from the to-do list items. So then we're basically going to say, okay, let cell equals table view dot DQ reusable cell with identifier. So this is going to return a reusable table view cell object after locating it by its identifier. So we're going to go ahead and press enter. And we're going to reference the to-do cell. And then we're going to say for index path. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to say, okay, every single cell based on what array item we have, you know, so starting at 0 for our arrays, it's going to say, okay, buy groceries. 1, go to the gym. 2, play with the cat, right? So it's basically going to return those values in the same order that our array is in. And in order to display that text, we're going to go ahead and add another line here. We're going to say cell dot text label. And we're actually going to unwrap it. So we're going to use a question mark. And then we're going to add a property of text. Right? We're changing and updating what that text in that cell says. We're going to have this equals to-do items, so our array. And again, we're going to reference that index path dot row. Finally, we're going to return the cell. The last thing we need to do is we need to basically say, okay, where are we getting this data from? We actually need to declare a data source. And we've already said that, hey, this is where we're going to be providing the kind of information to the table, but we do need to actually be very explicit with that. In case there's multiple tables that we do have within this one specific view. So what we're going to do is we're going to reference our table view and our view did load. So we're going to say TableView dot data source with a capital S equals self. So we're basically going to say, okay, you're going to get your data from this view controller. We're already passing along the data here, right? We're not going to be referencing any other, kind of outlets or sources, right? For our purposes today, we're just kind of staying within this view controller. So let's go ahead and now run our app and we'll kind of see how it looks in action. So my simulator popping up here, I'm just using the iPhone 16 Pro, but because we did kind of have those auto constraints already set up, whatever device you choose to use, it should all fit. So now we have our buy groceries, go to the gym, play with cat, right? All of our different kind of to-do list options, which is pretty cool. They reflect exactly as we've written them out in the array. So do keep in mind when you kind of have your table view kind of set up. This is why I also wanted to add the background. You can kind of see it's just going to be this white or black color depending on your default. And I've just returned to our view controller here, and I've just hidden our assistant for now because I just want to show you can actually kind of change the properties as well as the color of these cells as well. So if we were to double click on our title cell here, we can actually change how the text looks and behaves when it's highlighted. So maybe when we have our kind of title highlighted here, we can change the text to be yellow. If you want to just click on the cell itself in order to change the background color of the cells, you'll want to not double click it. So in this case, just the cell, the one single click, and you can change the background here. So if you're to make it purple, in order to change the font, you will have to double click, change the title and things like that, the font size, what kind of text it is, etc., etc. Even add things like a shadow and whatnot. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how that works. So our different items should have this yellow tint when we select them. Pretty interesting stuff here. Always feel free to play around with the attributes inspector and kind of customize your UI to your liking. Now we're actually going to be looking at creating a collection view, which is kind of more of that grid style as opposed to a list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our main storyboard here. I'm going to add a new view controller. So I'm going to drag and drop that. Kind of looks like a new phone screen. Pretty cool stuff there. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a collection view from our object library here. So I'm going to drag and drop that onto our view controller. Going to go to our auto layout here. I'm going to add the constraints to be 0 across the board here. Now this is going to totally take up all of our space here. Just like with our table view cell, we can click on the cell here. It might be a little bit hard to see, but mine is like this square-ish box here. If you want to go ahead and click on it, if you're having trouble finding it, on the left side of the screen here, you can click on your collection view, and then right under that is going to be the cell itself. And we're going to be adding an identifier just like we did with our table view. And we're going to call this collection cell. I'm going to hit enter to update that. And actually for our purposes today, usually with these collection views, I like to kind of think of them like a gallery. So maybe we'll make an image gallery, kind of like with your photos. And just so we have like a nice uniformed shape, I'm going to go to our size inspector here. So right next to my attributes inspector, it kind of looks like a triangle. I'm going to change the size from automatic to custom. And I'm going to change this to be 100 by 100 and hit enter. So a little bit smaller of a square here. In order to add images to our cells, we're actually going to go back to our library and we're going to create grab an image view. And we're going to drag and drop it into the cell here. Now you can feel free to adjust it as you'd like. So maybe if you really want this to kind of fit, you'll make it the exact same size. You can even go to the size inspector and set it to be 100 by 100 if you want to make it perfect. That was pretty close. That's pretty close. Amazing. But we're going to go back to our attributes inspector on our image view. I'm going to make sure that's on aspect fit. This way it should fit regardless. If you want to manually put your images in here, you can. So you can use the drag or drop down menu here. So if you want to see what a pencil looks like and etc., you absolutely can. But we're actually going to be grabbing our items from an array. And we're going to be doing that programmatically. So when we do create a new phone screen, we should usually create a view controller to go along with it. So in the bottom left here, I'm going to press the plus button and I'm going to do new file from template. We're just going to add a blank Swift file. From here, I'm just going to call it maybe collection view controller and hit create. And it should take us to this new Swift file. And I'm going to import UIKit. And then we're going to set up our class. If you really want to, kind of work smarter, not harder, you can always draw your inspiration from the pre-made view controller here. Otherwise, let's go ahead and say class. We're going to call it collection view controller. This is going to be a UI view controller. And then we're actually going to add a comma. And we're going to say UI collection view data source. So very similar to when we were creating our table view, we had the table view source. And with this one, we're going to want the collection view data source. We can also use the arrow to our advantage here, where it's like, hey, you're kind of missing the requirements to have a UI collection view data source. And we can press fix, and we'll add these pre-made functions. We're also going to add our override function view did load. We'll just say setup node goes here. Coolio. I'm gonna go back to our main storyboard really quick, and we actually need to connect these two elements. So whenever I'm dealing with the view controller, I'll typically just press this kind of square at the top here. You can even see while my mouse is hovering it says view controller to select the view controller as a whole. And we're going to go to the identity inspector. And this is where we're going to make that association and say, okay, for this view controller, I'm going to make sure that this collection view controller is controlling it. Now, when we select this and go to our assistant, we'll see the view controller file we had been working on previously. And it's important that we do that because we do need to control drag our collection view into this view controller. We're just going to call it collection view. But of course, whatever makes sense for your project, you can connect that outlet and name it whatever you'd like. Just because I like to have a little bit more space, I do love the assistant viewer, but I'm just going to, that was interesting. I'm just going to return us back to our Swift file here. And this is where we're going to be doing something very similar to our table view. This is going to return the number of items from our array. And let's actually go ahead and create that array. We might as well while we're here. So we'll make a new array, and maybe for this one, we'll just call it items. You can call it images maybe. Say let items equal. We're going to add our square brackets here for array. And this is where we're actually going to be referencing some images. And I'm just going to be using the default images that are built within Xcode itself. If you want to access those, you can go to the object library and you can actually press on the star button here. And this actually has a whole bunch of system images. If you were to go to things like mail, you might have noticed some of these from using any other Apple apps or projects, and you can even drag and drop to grab the name here. In an array, we actually just have to basically add these like a string, So I'm just going to add my square brackets. I know a lot of these off of like the top of my head, but if you want to just reference the name, so star.fill, comma, maybe we'll do like the moon.fill. If you're curious how I'm remembering these names or knowing what these names are, you can kind of see on the left side the name of all of these different icons. So we'll do flag.fill and maybe bell.fill. So this will basically allow us to say, hey, here's this array of images. I want you to later add the corresponding image here to that UI image view that we do have already associated in our cell. So here, this is where we're going to be returning the amount based on the numbers of items in our array. So we're just going to return items.count. In this function here, this is where we're going to configure and return each cell with an SF is what they're actually called, symbol image. So those SF images are kind of like those default there. And we're going to go ahead and say let cell equals collection view dot DQ reusable cell with identifier 4. I love the autofill feature. It saves so much time. And this is where we're going to be referencing the collection cell. And we're going to say for index path. Cool. Let's make a little bit of space here because now what we need to do is we need to get the image view inside the cell and set it to be the image. So we're going to say image view inside the cell and set SF image. All right. If let image view, capital V, equals cell.content view dot subviews dot first as, and we're going to unwrap this, UI image view. Add a brace here. We're going to say image view dot image equals UI image system, sorry, lowercase s, system name. And then this, instead of a string here, we're just going to say items at index path dot row. And another line, and we're going to say image view, capital V, dot tint color, tint color equals dot system. Let's do system pink, and we'll see how that looks. Just going to set the symbol color. Okay, so essentially what's happening here is it's going to say, all right, I want you to, update this view, so this image view, and I want you to use the image from this library. So I want you to have the system name, and then I want you to add the string of the items index path.row. So it's going to basically associate whatever that number is. So, the star.fill is 0. It's going to say, okay, for the image name, I want you to look up the SF symbol star.fill, and that's what I want you to put in that image view. And then at the end, we are tinting it. We do have an error down here because we need to return the cell. Amazing. We do have to do one more thing, and just like with our table view, we do need to declare the data source. So it's going to go ahead and say collection view dot data source equals self, and now that should allow us to access all of our items in our array here. All right, let's go ahead and see how this collection view looks. We're just going to add a navigation controller to go from our main screen here. So I'm just going to embed our first view in a navigation controller, and then I'm going to add a filled button here. I'll just say, I don't know, navigate. Then we're going to control drag to this other screen, action segue, show. And now we should be able to run our app here. And we should be able to access this other screen, navigate. We can kind of see we have our symbols, but they seem to be clipping just a little bit. We can only see like the top left corner of our items. Ahead and try to fix this programmatically. So let's go back to our collection view controller. And in our image view, we're going to go ahead and say image view dot frame. I'm going to say this equals CG rect for a rectangle. And we're going to say X is 0, comma, Y is also 0. And I believe we had our width was 100. And our height was also 100. Okay, let's go ahead and go back to our image view and go to our size inspector. And let's change the layout to be inferred auto resizing mask. We're just going to also select on these kind of arrows on the right here. And this should force the auto resizing to respect our 100 by 100. Okay, that's a lot better. We can kind of see our images here now have the proper color. Well, sometimes you have to do some debugging on the fly. I guess it just happens. So anyways, now our image should adjust appropriately. We'd love a little on-the-spot debugging. But that's it for our intro to table views and collection views in UIKit. Today we built that simple to-do list with UITableView. You can kind of see it here. We were also able to do the grid layouts with our collection view, play around with these elements, see how you want to incorporate them into your application. But both these components are essential for those dynamic lists in UIKit. If you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more UIKit lessons. And until next time, dream big and code bigger. Take care, everyone.